Is Lydia coming?
I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is 7:01.
Oh, here, that closer.
Thank you. First thing on the agenda is the committee reorganization. So that's you.
So our committee bylaws have a procedure for the annual committee reorganization, but when we have a midterm resignation that requires some reorganization, we follow the same protocol. That's what we've done in the past. So with our recent resignation, we have a vacancy for school committee chair, and the protocol is for me to ask for nominations 2 times. Once I receive one or two nominations after I've asked for them, we will vote on the first nomination. If that results in an approved vote, then the position is filled. If not, then the second nomination will be voted on, and if that doesn't work, then you just keep asking for nominations. If the new chair is exiting a current position, then the new chair will then take over for me, and they will ask for 2 nominations and so forth. So that it'll follow the same protocol as we did the last time. So with that said, I'd like to have nominations for chair.
I'd like to nominate Morrow.
Okay. Do I have a second nomination? No, a second person.
Oh, second, wait, what? A second person.
Is there a second nomination? If there isn't, you don't have to have one. I just have to ask.
A second person
Okay.
to nominate to be chair.
An additional, thank you. That's a good word.
Different.
Okay.
Oh, I like it.
If there isn't an additional, I'll ask for a vote on the chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can vote behind myself.
Yeah. So now you'll take over and ask, because you've been the assistant chair, interim
Okay.
as chair.
All right. So since now I'm the chair, I need to ask for nominations for the assistant chair. Does anybody nominate?
I nominate Bethlen.
Anybody else?
Well, I would
don't.
throw, no.
No, don't.
Don't?
No,
You don't want to? Okay.
No, because it makes it too confusing. Don't.
Don't do
Don't
it.
go there.
Okay. Then, yeah, no one else.
Okay, so I guess then now we vote for
Yes.
Bethlen?
Oh, I can vote
Okay.
too.
All right,
Okay. Thank you.
great.
Thank you, Al.
Thanks, Lydia.
Oh, no, it's good, it's good.
I would have said something if it wasn't okay. But yeah.
Okay, so now we are, we're doing minutes? Yeah. Let me just, do you have the dates on there?
Colleen, what are the dates of the minutes that we're looking at?
April 25th and May 9th.
For April, okay, so for April 25th and May 9th. Why is this not working?
I'll make
I
a
make-
motion to accept the minutes of April 25th.
Start with
Or
one.
do we, okay,
Yeah.
so we're doing, okay.
One at a
Do
time.
one at a time.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Any discussion?
I'm abstaining only because I wasn't part of that meeting.
Okay. All right, vote?
All in favor? Yes.
Okay. And then the second, sorry, May
May
9th. Right. Motion? Does anybody have a motion?
I motion to accept them.
Okay. A second?
I'll second. Yeah.
Okay. Discussion? All right. Vote?
All in favor?
All right.
Just,
I think I put in the packet the May 20th.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. May
I'm
20th are in
looking
there
for
too.
them. I thought there was another one.
Okay, all right. All right, so then the,
I don't have.
a motion for the May 20th?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of the May 20th.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I,
And a second?
I was absent from that one,
Okay.
so.
yeah, I'll second
Oh, you
that.
second? Okay.
If there's a.
Do we have a discussion?
Is that something that, is that a big deal? Okay. Oh, what-
Any discussion?
Sorry, no.
Okay. Vote?
All in favor?
Okay.
Well, I'll just abstain since I wasn't there.
All right, thank you. Chairperson's report. I wanted to thank everybody who came out to town meeting and voted on Article 3, which passed, which included the $610,000 for the Green Meadow, which we will be talking about later. Actually, yeah, we're going to be talking about that tonight with approving to send all those off to the Board of Selectmen so that those can all get paid. And before I go any further, since Mike Guzzo is here, does anybody have any objections to me moving the reserve fund transfer review
Oh, it's okay, we can, yeah, he doesn't have to.
before?
Sure, absolutely.
Before you or after?
It's, yeah.
After?
It's up to you.
Okay.
Do it right now. Well,
Okay.
after your report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so after my report, we'll move the reserve fund transfer review. Okay, so there's been some discussion about trying to have a joint meeting with school councils and the Green Meadow Futures Committee. I think it would be great if we kind of had some sort of discussion at some point about having a meeting of some sort, maybe with just the Green Meadow School Council and the Green Meadow Futures Committee, and then maybe doing something else with the other, like maybe that could be something that goes forward, that the school councils come and, give us reports, or that we have some sort of roundtable meeting or something, because I think it's important for us to get their input.
Do we have any representatives from the school council at Green Meadow on the future committee? Just curious, no?
I don't
Okay,
think so.
just curious, yeah.
No.
No? Okay.
Donna was, right, she was going to figure out things.
Right, but she's out right now, yeah, okay. Sooner versus later, are we thinking?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
before the end of the school year?
Well, it would be good to do it
Yeah.
before the end of the school year, I think, at least with
Great.
the Green, the Green Meadow School Council. And
So do you want to head that up and make contact, or do you want to assign it to one of us?
Well, since you had already talked to Sarah Donnelly, maybe if you could do that, that would be great.
Yep.
And then we can kind of go from there to figure out what dates might work
Maybe do a
well.
doodle poll. Colleen's good at doing those.
Yeah, just.
I don't
Okay.
know what that is.
It's online so that everybody can say what their good dates are.
Right.
It's really fast, so.
Great, thank you. And then the next thing is the mask workshops that I'm trying to schedule for this summer. So I've already contacted Dorothy, I think her last name is Presser, from Mask. And she said, as of right now, she's very open with dates. So originally, I was thinking that maybe we could do a workshop before one of the school committee meetings this summer. So July 25th and August 29th are the two dates that we have this summer. And we have two workshops. So one is establishing operating and communication protocols, and the next one is goal setting. And she suggested that we do it in that order.
Just, I'm not going to be around for the July one. As
Okay.
it turns out, I'm going to be away, so.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now.
Maybe if we
July,
could-
what was the other one?
August 29th,
Oh, 29th?
29th, yeah.
We'll be back into school by that point, right? So there might be some things that we might have to address, maybe have a separate meeting
Yeah.
'Cause that's how we did
Okay.
it with the
Yeah,
other
that's the way we
workshop.
did it before, but I,
Yeah, right. With
since
everybody's
those were the
time.
dates that we would already be
Right,
meeting, I
yeah.
figured that, I'd put
Yeah.
those together. Natasha, do you have any input, since you're going to be?
Well, I know you and I read it. I don't know if this is part of the district governance project for the amounts, or are they like all the workshops?
Yeah, she'd sent,
Yeah.
it is. She
Oh,
sent me
okay.
the link at one point. I was like, yeah, that's exactly.
Okay, yeah,
Okay. I don't know the dates, but if you want to just email me.
Okay.
Just what you're looking at. I can
okay.
Neither of
Maybe
those
Colleen
dates will
can
work.
doodle
None
it,
of those.
but-
I was just
Okay.
going to say
Yeah,
that for
that way if there's
vacations.
any
Yeah.
other
For
open dates
vacations
in
and
the-
that, yeah.
Right.
In the
Okay.
summer.
Yeah.
All right, then,
Doodle work.
Colleen, I'll get in touch with you about doing that, okay. Let's see, and then, the school committee opening, just to let everybody know, if anybody's interested to, if they're interested in becoming a member. They have until May 30th to apply. There's a link on the website, actually, I think it's on the town website, to send resumes to. And as of right now, we're looking at possibly June 18th as a confirmation date with the Board of Selectmen.
Are we putting that out to parent newsletters and things
Yeah.
like that?
That's a
Because
good idea.
I know last time, people were wishing that it was out
Yes.
there more.
Yeah.
So,
We were actually going to add to our policy to make sure that it went out to the established outlets, all established outlets for the district.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. I think that's all for my chair report. So we'll get right into the reserve fund transfer review.
I think you
Oh,
You want to come up, Mike?
speak into the microphone, please. It's really hard to hear,
Yep.
and it's hard to hear when
Okay.
you're reviewing it at home.
yep.
Thank you.
So Ken Estabrook had asked Michelle Resendes and Mike Guzzo to prepare the reserve fund transfers. Now that the $610,000 was approved for the Green Meadow renovations as part of the reserve funds at the annual town meeting, in order to process these transfers, we need to have the school committee vote to approve them and to have the chair sign them. This is what,
It's amazing.
that's a lot of money right there.
And a lot of work on the part of
And
Michelle.
a lot of work that's already
Lot of
taken
work.
place, and Mike Guzzo.
Yep, and Mike also.
If you have any questions of Mike Guzzo, he was kind enough to come tonight because Michelle had already notified us that she wasn't able to attend tonight, and she hadn't planned on it, but this was a last-minute addition to the agenda. So Mike's here to answer any questions about the reserve fund process you might have, but then we do need a vote of approval and then the chair to sign it, and we can send it to the Board of Selectmen next.
Sounds good. Mike, you want to come up, or? I had one question, because I think the total came to $374,000 or something. The rest of the invoices, I think, have to be paid by July 15th, you said?
Right. In
So-
other words, when in discussing this with Michelle, and even before this whole thing started, that was the intent that we were going to have. We knew that as of right now, we had a little bit less than $400,000 that had actually been paid, and we had segregated that separately. And in meeting with Michelle, my recommendation was, and she agreed that probably within 2 weeks, we would have the other amount to be presented to come to us, and then we would present that, and that would satisfy. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't see any problem in terms of timelines, getting it done. So, if anyone who's not familiar with the process, after the school committee signs it, or at least on our side, what ends up happening, it usually goes to the town administrator for approval, and I review it. Then after that, it goes to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen only reviews it. They do not have the right to vote on it. So that when you go to the Board of Selectmen, they can review it and say, well, I don't like this, I don't like that. They can lower the amount, but the actual approval process is reserved for the Finance Committee. But usually, since I've been here, I know it hasn't been turned down, let's put it that way. So, the success rate is pretty good. And Michelle and I have been going over this for a while now. And by the time Greg gets it on Monday or tomorrow, and by the time the Board of Selectmen vote, I will have read it at least twice or more. My job over the weekend, that's what I'm doing. So, but I've already seen most of it as Michelle has given it to me.
Excellent.
But as I said, I will not be there for the 4th BOS meeting, but I will be there for the Finance Committee meeting, which is really the one that counts. And I would like to thank Michelle publicly for the amount of time she's put into it. And we spent a lot of time the other day, probably 2 or 3 hours working on this. And I'm satisfied with what's in the package so far and what we've done. I want to compliment her on that. She's made my life a whole lot easier right now.
So,
And we've lowered the rhetoric considerably, by the way, on this, so.
so the work's not all going to be done, though, by July 15th, I guess is my
No, but
question.
what'll happen is whatever work has been done, will be there, and we will look at whatever the other, say, purchase orders, whatever she has in place, and, we'll make a decision as to that, whether, if it turns out, let's say, we don't use the full 610, let's assume there's only 500, and there's another, let's say, 50, 60,000 that will get paid, after July 15th, then, the money's just still going to be, the reserve fund will go into free cash. But there also is a mechanism in place if we had to, and we knew what that money was, and we could, it was there, could be encumbered if that came to it, but I don't know.
So we wouldn't have to
We're not-
vote on it again at the fall town meeting? Like
No,
the balance of the work or anything?
No,
Okay.
no,
Good, okay.
no. My theory is, let's see how everything goes between now and the end of the year. We do have one, after the next round, let's say the second one, we still have the ability to do another reserve fund if we chose to do it. There is time, believe it or not, to do a third one if there had to be, but I don't think there will be. I've thought about this for months now, what the different possibilities would be and how we'd work them out and everything. And I'm not as concerned as I was, let's say, 3 or 4 months ago when this whole thing started. I'm not. I always tell people, don't panic until I do.
Thank you.
When you say the end of the year, are you talking about the fiscal end?
Fiscal year ends on June 30th. By law, though, you can process invoices up and through the 15th. That will be charged to the current fiscal year. So we have until the 15th, really, to do it. So as long as we get on the 15th, it's not, if we know there's an invoice that's in process, we'll work out the details to get it done. I don't foresee there's a problem. And even if some of them were to carry over, I don't think it's a problem, because I really don't think that's going to happen. But that's just me talking. Michelle and I have worked on this for a while, so in spite of all the rhetoric, my job is to take that and just put it aside and deal with, getting this done. Because that's what I want to do.
Well, we really appreciate all the work that you and Michelle.
I think everybody else that's helped on it, especially Michelle. It's been a lot of help, at least from my end. And as I said, we have been working on this for a while now. And so it's not as if a lot of what I'm seeing is brand new, in spite of, other people not knowing, but I have, so I've seen it. And so I said, with the exception maybe of a few things that are in there, I've seen just about everything so far, so I feel comfortable with it.
Great.
Great, thank you very
Okay.
much. Thank
Anything
you.
else?
Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
No,
Thank you very much, Mike.
Okay. So we just,
Make a motion.
so we're not going to vote, we don't vote on that now?
Yeah, vote on it, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So a
Do
motion
you
to
want me to make a motion?
Motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept Michelle's presentation, I guess, or her synopsis of the reserve fund transfer and how that will work. I'm not sure if that's how I should say it or
Have the
not.
chair sign it.
And, okay, also have the chair then give permission for the chair to sign.
Okay. Second?
I'll second.
Okay. And now vote?
Any discussion?
Oh, right, discussion? No? Okay.
All in
Vote?
favor?
All in favor? Okay.
You want to sign it?
Yeah, I'll sign
Mike,
it
you
right
want
now.
to Take it right from here.
Is that blue?
Yeah.
This one?
Excellent.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
Thank you, Mike, for all of your work and dedication.
Okay.
In case people don't know who I am, I didn't know, I'm Mike Does, I'm the finance director for the town. So, I don't know how many, I never said that.
Live streaming.
So-
Just so that everybody knows.
And just, I forgot to mention at the top of the meeting that I need any person that, after notifying the chair of the public body, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of a public body, or may transmit the meeting through any medium subject to reasonable requirements of the chair as to the number, placement, and operation of equipment used so as not to interfere with the conduct of the meeting. At the beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any recordings. And as you all know, we have WAVM, and Brian Sanders is also. Thank you very much.
Thanks for letting us know.
Okay, let's go on with the superintendent's report.
So I'd like to begin my report with positive communications about our staff and programs. I just received an email today with a message that I'd like to share with the community. The message was, "Good morning. After attending last night's concert, I felt I had to reach out. I have one word, amazing. I literally could have sat there for another 2 hours watching and listening to Mr. Kevin Kozik and his orchestra. The quality of the music last night was like nothing I've ever heard from the MHS band, and I myself was there 30 years ago. Mr. Kozik has taken this band to another level with his experimental pieces, his use of visual aspects in the concert, his professionalism, and he instills in the students, and just the musical pieces themselves. The key here that I see through my student is that Mr. Kozik makes band fun, all the while keeping it professionally run, holding them accountable for themselves. By making band fun, the students are like sponges. They want to learn to be the best they can be. Through his teachings, they have pushed themselves so far, and they probably don't even realize it. The students in the Maynard Public Schools are extremely lucky to have a teacher the quality of Kevin Kozik. So thank you, Mr. Kozik. I hope you all have a wonderful summer and look forward to the 2019-20 concert season. I'm also pleased that the school committee voted to accept the Chapter 7137M sharing of administrative functions at their meeting just before the town. Voters also approved it at the town meeting, at the annual town meeting. This will allow the town administrator and I to work on an MOU for us to bring back to the boards for joint approval in regard to the facilities and grounds and responsibilities of the various departments, which we all have been saying has to get done. But this is the mechanism now that will allow us to do that. So I'm excited that that was approved both by the school committee and the town voters. I'm also pleased that the town voted to fund the reserve funds that will be used to pay for the renovations at Green Meadows. Our community is very supportive of our schools, and this is something we should all be very thankful for. On another positive staff note from town meeting, two of our outstanding high school teachers, Jean LaBelle and Paul Orzek, were recognized for receiving the Town of Maynard performance.
All for them, Mary.
So our two outstanding teachers, Jean LaBelle and Paul Orzek, were recognized for receiving the Town of Maynard Performance Recognition Program citation for outstanding performance. I'd like to repeat the remarks that Mary Branley and I made that night as a small token of our gratitude. Jean LaBelle and Paul Orzek are two amazing educators, individually as well as together. There are so many initiatives that they have been involved in separately, like advising student government and origami clubs, However, together they have been working for about 10 years as the senior project coordinators. The senior project is an exceptional program that provides the community with an opportunity to see true, authentic assessment of Maynard High School graduates. The projects include an opportunity for the graduate to do an internship in a career area of passion of their choice, write a college-level research paper on that career area or passion, and perform a panel presentation and public presentation on the topic. This program started out as a pilot program and was approved 7 years ago as a graduation requirement. Most recently, the senior project coordinators elevated this program by creating a community steering committee and increasing student expectations that all students will participate. Their most recent amazing accomplishment was actually started on Friday, May 11th in 2018 with the Maynard Senior Project Luncheon and panel presentations, which were also the culminating events for the Massachusetts Department of Elementary and Secondary Education Leading the Nation celebration. The Assistant Secretary for Career Education and the Associate Commissioner of Career Education, Keith Westrich, were in attendance. The Associate Commissioner was so impressed with the Maynard Senior Project that he invited Jean and Paul to present at the DESE Connecting Activities and Innovation Pathway convening on May 9th, 2019, just recently. The Maynard Senior Project graduation requirement has put Maynard on the map as a school system that is leading the nation, and we owe our gratitude to Jean LaBelle Pierce and Paul Orzak for that. Finally, the school committee wanted to thank our student representatives for their commitment and their responsibilities all year and their insightful participation in our meetings. So we have a couple of cards, and unfortunately Patrick is not with us, but AJ, you can probably deliver this to Patrick?
Yeah.
I wanted to thank you for your service as the student representatives. There's one for you and one for Patrick. Thank you.
AJ?
Thank you very much for all you do for us. It's really fantastic.
Right down the line. Get over here. Thank you so much. You guys were great.
And that is the end of my superintendent's report.
Student representative report?
So first off, I'd like to say thank you for the cards. I really appreciate that. So a few of the highlights from the past few weeks. Obviously, the big one for the seniors was this past Friday was the senior project presentations. And I can say from a lot of comments that they went very well that day. I know I personally got to present to a good panel, and Mr. Girardi actually ended up on my panel. So I presented my topic to him, and this past Tuesday, we had the student trifold night, which is just such a big night. I actually didn't know a lot of what my classmates' projects were, and it was actually really interesting to see like what they were actually looking into and what they're going into. There was a lot more science than I thought there was going to be, which is kind of a peak for me. So that was really good. Upcoming also for seniors is this next Wednesday begins our senior trips. It is our last finals day, so later that day around 3 o'clock we are heading into Boston, going to Fire and Ice, seeing the Red Sox. And then that following Monday we're going on a harbor cruise, so we're really just getting ready for then. I unfortunately couldn't see the band concert last night, but I did see the chorus concert that previous Wednesday, which I can give my huge props to. And I heard some clips from the band concert, and it amazes me how much they've like grown in this past year. Kevin Kozik, he's done an amazing job this past year just coaching the band on. And the biggest thing for me was this past Sunday was the WAVM banquet. So unfortunately, I passed down my CEO reins, but I know that we got some of the CEOs right here, and that's what I would like to get into. Is I'd like to introduce Talal, who I mentioned at previous meetings. Who I mentioned at previous meetings. He is going to be taking my place this following year for school committee representative. So I'll have him introduce himself, say what he's in, and all that.
Hi, my name's Salal Siddiqui. I'm currently a junior. Right now, I was one of the CEOs this past Sunday, so I'm a CEO of WAVM. I'm the president of NHS, and I'm involved in peer leaders, and I do band. And it gets kind of busy sometimes, but it's making it work, and I'm excited to be part of this. Yeah,
Thank you for stepping up.
no problem.
So him and Pat will be continuing with school committee rep, so you will have him again for another year. But I guess the biggest thing is I just kind of want to leave my thing. I know that there's going to be a lot of changes this next year, like not just us leaving, but just everything around us has been kind of like changing. Like I know Ms. Clancy obviously stepped up to the board now, so congratulations. And there's a lot of stuff going on, and I guess the biggest thing I know you guys are looking at is just trying to keep people at Maynard. I know there's been a lot of problems with like Assabet and just AMSA, other schools. So I guess the biggest advice I would give you is look to what makes Maynard High unique. Like I think, again, WAVM, I know obviously I'm biased in this, but WAVM for the past 5 years now, I've been in it. In the past 3 years I've been really involved, has been like amazing. It really connects you with other people. Like I've talked to people who I never would have talked to if it hadn't been for AVM. I would have never been president of NHS if I hadn't been in WAVM in the first place. It got me everything I needed to learn, and it's just been such an incredible experience. And that's why I say really, really look to embrace that aspect of the high school, because like the communications program, a lot of kids, that's what really like is pushing them towards Maynard. That's really a deciding factor. Like just having a radio station in the high school is just something that I think is overlooked sometimes, and it makes me kind of sad, but it's just such a unique aspect of a high school to have its own radio and TV station of that caliber. Like, it's just amazing to me. And another thing is just like the music programs, like you got that email last night, just the music program is doing incredible right now, and I think it's just gonna go up from here. So to have that keep going, you really just want to try to put yourselves out to the public. Like I've done most of the Fowler events at this point, like tech-wise, and some of the parents are just amazed by what they see, and I think that's how you really keep them going, is to get them, when a parent looks at their child being happy, there's nothing that they would do to take away from that. If they see their child happy here, it's going to keep them going through Maynard for the rest of their high school years. Like it's been, I know we were debating going to Aspen at one point. I said I could never leave Maynard. But I know there's some kids that will, and there's just, you got to look for that X factor that's going to keep them there. But that's pretty much my note. And obviously this is my last school committee meeting since, actually no, it would be the day before graduation that you guys would have your next one, but I hope to see you guys, I hope to see some of you guys there, whether it be that senior awards night. I know it's also coming up on the 5th at 6:30, around then. But I know that's another big one. And graduation is Friday at 7. You guys know better than I do at this point. But thank you guys so much for this opportunity. It's been really enlightening.
Thanks for your input, AJ.
I was going to ask a question. So you had said early this year, I think it was, that there aren't as many kids, it seems as though, are going into WAVM. And I wanted to ask how we could, if you've got any ideas on how we could encourage them.
I think embracing more of the WAVM side, and I'm not trying to throw anything against the communications program. I know that's what it's gotten a lot of kids interested. I know some kids have been going into communications because of that. One of my best friends, Soren, has gone into communications because of the classes he took. Like, he loves it. But I think embracing more of the WAVM side, I think it's kind of misconstrued that the school part and WAVM thing are like the same thing, which it's not true completely. Like, we do all this after school stuff. We do a lot of just tech events. And it's really fun. And it's more to drive it as more of a community driven thing. Like, I'm going into pharmacy. I'm not obviously touching any of this stuff when I go into college, but like just the memories I've made, like it's been a friend experience. Like it's a community service group, I'd say, more than well, it's not, but for me, it has been. Like, it's been just the experience of being able to go with my friends, do something that we enjoy, even if it's not like our future. But that's why I'd say definitely just drive the telethon more. The telethon is what got me into AVM in the first place, and like, I hope to see in the future that it keeps going.
And the communications will absolutely help you in pharmaceutical, by the way. So, life skill.
Yeah, no, the communications part, but like, I meant more the actual like filming and editing part, because that's what a lot of it is as well. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your insights.
Thank you.
It makes me think we should ask other, like, high schoolers, like, what's kept you here? What do you think are the unique things in Maynard? You know, just to, because I think they have a lot of good things to say to help us really understand your experience.
Thanks, AJ. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch his name. Is it Talal? Talal? Can you?
Talal Siddiqui.
Okay. Can you just spell that?
Talal, and my last name is Siddiqui.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Oh, are you on the school council for
Yeah.
Maynard High School? 'Cause
Yeah, the School Improvement
nice.
Council, I'm on
I
it.
saw
Yeah.
him there, and I was like, that might be a good opportunity. for
absolutely.
sharing information.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, me and Pat are both on that, so we like kind of like exchange ideas
Oh,
from that to
good.
there.
Great.
So, yeah.
Yeah, because Natasha and I have been talking about trying to get more people, you know, from the school councils to come and, you know, share. So that'll be awesome.
What's happened to you, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great. Thank you so much.
no problem.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Look forward to next year.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now we'll go on to the Green Meadows Summer Program Renovation Plan.
So thank you. The current school committee direction has been that we will renovate the Green Meadows School and it will open for the 2019-20 school year with all the teachers moving back to their original classrooms. To that end, we've been working on multiple documents and plans to make that happen. One of the documents, and we made some extras for the audience, but the school committee has, one of the documents is a construction schedule that was provided to the FinCom. That document led to the recommendation at the annual town meeting to fund the repairs necessary. And at that meeting, there was discussion about how to make that building remain operable and useful for many years to come. So the FinCom wanted to make sure that we were actually trying to make sure that that building stays useful. And even talked about some alternate uses even if we do get a new building funded through MSBA. So that was their vision, which was nice to hear. The next document is a schedule of recommendations made by the Green Meadow Future Committee with notations by the Facility Department, including estimated completion dates. I believe this document was provided to the Green Meadow Future Committee at their last meeting. And I believe both of those documents are already on the Green Meadow Future website. If not, we'll make sure to get them up there.
Which one is he talking about?
And then the last document is this document with the maps of Green Meadow and Fowler on it. So this is the 2019 Summer Use Cleaning and Renovation Plan. It took several meetings to determine which summer programs would remain at Green Meadow School because we have so many programs at all three schools, actually, that it's hard for our custodians to clean the building even on a normal year, let alone a year where we have renovations as well. So we put together this plan, and we shared this document with the teachers union on Monday, and now we're sharing it with the greater community. And you'll notice that because there's not a lot of room, we were able to only move some of the special ed ESY programs over to the Fowler, but at least they're using less rooms in the Green Meadow during the course of the year. And thanks to Lois Cohn for being so flexible, Excel will be moving, they'll be moving all of their program over to Fowler at some point so that there'll be extra opportunities for cleaning and repairs over at the Green Meadow. So those are the minor changes that were made, but they still had to be made and considered, and we had to meet with all the people to talk about that. And then there's a section that talks about renovations plan, cleaning plan, and target dates ultimately at the very bottom with a target date for teachers to be able to access the rooms 2 weeks before they're actually starting their school year off, so around August 12th. Now, there also have been some considerations raised about alternative locations, not going forward with a plan of just moving everybody back. And I feel very strongly that that will be very challenging logistically, but if we're going to consider that we talk about that early. So I would like to share the considerations publicly so people can hear them and give you my recommendations as to how to move forward. So the first one is that we had already thought of as soon as we had the problem. We thought, well, can't we just move, either K and pre-K to one whole building or to two separate buildings? Can we put, pre-K maybe in the wing where the 8th grade used to be at the high school, even though it's fully occupied? Can we, we thought about the different ways of moving them into other buildings, and logistically, we just could not make that happen for several reasons. One, because there's a reason why those buildings have filled up, and there's less room, and not convenient room. So even in the Fowler, where there's a little bit of room, the classes would be spread so far apart, it wouldn't be like the rest of Fowler, where there's whole teams of grade levels together, so it wouldn't be conducive. Also, we wouldn't be able to get the specialists to commute from the Green Meadow here, so there'd be additional costs for staffing. So moving the grades to other buildings did not work when we first thought about it, and it's probably not a logical plan moving forward either. A second alternative that was discussed was keeping the old wing closed and keeping the staff in this year's temporary locations. And while I'm grateful that the staff and community have been making these temporary locations work for the duration of the year, this has been challenging, and I don't believe it would be a good idea for a long-term learning environment. So I'm certainly not recommending it, but I just want everybody to know we're discussing as many ideas as we possibly can and trying to do it collaboratively. A third alternative location discussion was having double sessions with the Fowler School and the Green Meadow School for grades levels pre-K through 8. The concerns are that this would affect a third of our staff, students, and families. There are financial implications that would have to be worked out, like how do you make the busing work? Does it cost more? There's food service implications, because in some schools where there's been split sessions like that, they don't have any food service anymore. There's no lunch or breakfast because of the way, the times that the students are there. And how do we work that out with our contract with the company that we have? Those are all very difficult things that would be very challenging to overcome. And again, much like the other ones, I really don't think that they're an ideal solution. After those discussions were had, I'm still every day meeting with people trying to learn, how are we going to improve Green Meadow? What are the problems that are still there? And I had some concerns raised about the Tectum roof panels on the K side of the closed wing. And with all of this information, I actually did think of another alternative solution as well, and that would be if we determine that those roof panels on the K side of that wing aren't appropriate or aren't safe or whatever we find out about them, one other option that we could consider is the pre-K side of the old wing actually has metal roofing, not Tectum roofing.
Right.
And what I've learned in talking with Josh on the Green Meadow Future Committee, I met with him this week as well, meeting with the union, meeting with some school committee members, that with an enzyme scrub, as the union said, that would be one huge step. With an enzyme scrub on the metal roof on the pre-K side, you could actually renovate that side, and there should not be problems, other than we still eventually have to patch and pray and get the roof going and all that stuff. So one other option that I thought of, and I'm just sending these options out tonight so that people know how much has been considered, what we're considering, because if we consider any drastic options, we're going to have public forums, we're going to have to do a lot. But one of the, I just thought of this accommodation, which is, could we move the preschool into their location after that's been renovated? And if we don't get an understanding of the K side that makes everybody comfortable, not open that up and try to make the rest of the building work for the kindergarten teachers. So I'm just throwing that out as a potential fourth option if we get to that point. But in regard to that discolored tectum, what I think we have to do and what I think the school committee needs first is to let you know there's some concern about discoloration on some of those panels. Some of them are that kind of dingy white gray look, but some of them are darker. And everybody I've talked to say that they've never seen that, so it's very unusual. Some of them have said, well, you know what, the original layer of the roof was asphalt. Maybe it was asphalt that leaked through. Just a theory, we don't know. Some of them have said it could have been some kind of masking agent, or I don't know. There's all kinds of terms I've heard. But the bottom line is, you need to know for sure before you can make decisions as a school committee. So what I'm recommending tonight is that this, I have tried to put out a call to ASP Environmental, who did our mold testing the last time, and I put out a call to UEC, who is our town's environmental consultant, just to try to get you an estimate as to what it would cost to have those tiles tested. But unfortunately, they haven't gotten back to me yet, because this has kind of developed over the last couple of days. And so at the last time when we had them come in, I think it was about $2,000 to have them do the testing. And I know this would be a different type of testing, but I don't think it's going to be a super large amount. And I think for the peace of mind for our staff and for the school committee, I think it's a worthy investment to have those tectum tiles tested and find out why they look different. And so I would ask the school committee to vote to approve having me reach out to those companies or any company that we can get that's appropriate to test those tiles so that we can come back to the school committee with test results. And then we have to make a definite plan because, as you heard Mike, we have to pay those bills. We have to make a plan. So if we're going to wait for that side of the roof to be done, then it doesn't make sense to put a suspended ceiling on that side of the building, right? We can save some money for the town and wait and figure out how to do it the correct way. I think that's the prudent course of action, and I was hoping that the school committee would approve me having those tectum panels tested, and then we can report back to the school committee and make some final decisions about what plans moving forward we're going to continue with.
So where are the tiles again? Which ones are we talking about?
So actually, what's interesting is they're actually a structural member. Josh, can you explain it better than I can? Would you mind explaining? I think they're actually the roof.
Well, it's the roof, it's the
underside of
roof
the
decking.
The roof decking, yeah. Josh can explain it.
Structural roof decking components. So on the pre-K side, you have the metal decking. That is corrugated metal decking. That's one way of structurally supporting the roof above. On the other side, you have the tectum roof panels, which are an inlay product that is also a structural component. So just to be clear, so we understand the full magnitude, if we have them tested and there are problems, it's not as simple as just taking them down.
It's a roof problem.
It's a roof issue. So it's quite a project if there's an issue there.
And because of that, I think it's really important for the school committee to know, is that a problem or isn't it a problem? And for the staff to know that we're going to that degree to make sure that we know whether that roof is okay. I think we had a good meeting, the union and I, about making sure that we're going to try and make everybody comfortable one way or another.
And tectum, if it is allowed, depending on the test results, tectum can be painted up to 6 times without impacting the fire rating or acoustical properties, just for information.
So actually, Josh did give me some recommendations on the enzyme scrub, or, he explained it to me about the enzyme scrub and then sealers that you could put on it. So once it's determined, if it's determined to be safe, then great. It's safe. We can go through the enzyme process and make everything clean and then get a suspended ceiling on it, and we can open up the whole wing. But I really feel like we've got to have a good plan. We've got to move forward together, all of us, teachers, school committee, all of us working together to make sure we have a good plan where everybody's feeling comfortable.
So one of these two companies can come in and tell us what it is and then give ideas on the best way to fix it.
Correct.
So,
Well, as far as ideas on how to fix it, again, Josh has been very helpful. We also got approved, part of that $610,000 was to do the $50,000 study of the roof system. And so we also have that going on, but that will take longer to actually figure out how to fix the roof and how to make sure things aren't leaking.
I'm just wondering if it's something, like if you've got mold in a house or something, that they can put a sealant on, and that kind of thing or special kind of paint or something like that, but I guess you won't know until you actually...
So on those types of matters, I always like to defer to the industrial hygienist. They should make the recommendation for that. The only other thing, listening to the conversation, I would highly recommend that we get a blank sample as well. So grab one of the tiles that's as clean as possible so that you have something to compare it to and benchmark against.
So test not only a tile that's darker, but one that's, looks normal, right?
Yes.
I think there's several tiles that should be sampled, because there's several variations in color. Some are yellowish, some are grayish, some are blackish, some are black with white spots, some are white with brown spots. And I think there could potentially be a whole host of various problems in the different rooms.
So the Teton plates the rest of the building's Teton plates, but we're not worried, the other ones are not discolored? Okay.
No.
Correct.
That's what I want to just clarify, that so we were talking about what the issue was and trying to deal with it, we're talking about...
We're just talking about the K-wing, and the K-wing was built at a different time.
Right.
So the panels were produced at a different time. They may have a different composition in terms of the ratio of cementitious materials to the wood fiber, and things have progressed technology-wise. So this isn't anything that I've ever seen before, and I've dealt with Tectum, so I found it very concerning when I saw the photos.
Just one point of clarification, there is a little bit of staining in some of the other classrooms outside the pre-K and K-wing. Basically, anywhere you saw a roof leak, you can see, but it looks very much like a roof leak. You can see where the water came through, so.
So these are more mysterious,
This
not
is
seen it before.
very unusual,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, unusual stuff. Got it.
And Josh has a lot of experience too, so
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
I'm getting input from everybody,
Yep.
and we're trying to figure out how to deal with this.
Yep.
Karen?
Not sure that I actually need the mic, so I wasn't going to get up. I just wanted to point out that you should look in those other rooms as well, because there are other rooms, particularly 5B, and a few other rooms that have the same type of ceiling, that have some issues in the coloration in those rooms. And if you're going to do that K-wing, please take a look at the other rooms and consider those that have unusual colorations, checking those as well, because if we find that we can do something as simple as sealing them, then do them all,
Sure. Can you let me know, talk to the staff and let me know other rooms,
Absolutely,
and then we can work together on that?
absolutely.
I can do a walkthrough tomorrow morning.
Sure, that'd be great, thank you.
Can you also share that with the Green Meadow Future Committee? Yep. Yeah.
That'd be great. So I would ask a motion to approve me working with, our consultant or another company to get that testing done. Motion.
I'll make that motion, since you said it so eloquently.
I second it.
More conversation?
Right. Sorry.
Discussion.
Discussion. Do we do a deadline, like a date that this has to be done by as part of the motion, or is that something we discuss after?
I would just say ASAP.
Yes.
I want this done as soon as possible, because I really I'm feeling the pressure. You saw Mike here. We have to spend the money. We got to spend the money prudently.
Yeah.
And we have to come up with a plan. We have a plan. We have plans now in place, and we're seeing them all coming together. But let's make sure they're the right plan.
Correct.
That everybody is comfortable with.
Yeah.
So ASAP.
And if we find out whatever's going on, we need to then make a decision on what we're doing with that section.
Correct.
Correct.
Is
Very important.
Very
It's part of the plan.
time-sensitive.
Yeah, it's very time sensitive. So, I will try to get the companies to do it as quickly as possible. I don't know what it takes to test. I know what it took to do the air sampling. That was relatively quick. There was a quick turnover time for that. I don't know what it's going to take. I'm assuming it's a swab test, but I don't know. That's only some of what I've learned. I don't know. There's probably other testing.
They're going
to grab a plug or a piece.
Yeah.
Okay, so there'll be other testing that'll be done, and then I don't know how quickly that'll come back, but as soon as it does, I will notify the school committee, and even if we have to have an extra meeting or something to do things quickly, I want to get this done as quickly as possible, because I feel the need for us to have a plan in place.
We have to take the vote. Yes. So I also, going along with that time frame, we need to draw a line in the sand of at what point we have to figure out what we're doing in September. Is it July 1st? I can't imagine it being any later than July 1st, because, yeah.
No, I would
we
say,
need to-
like, within the next week or two, we have to
Okay.
have a plan and a commitment to go in one direction, because I don't see us being able to, if some of the more extreme alternative locations, I don't see us being able to plan split sessions
Right.
quickly. That's just not going to happen.
Well, and it's not
And
anything
it's
we have
not
to do
the
for a
ideal.
full year either. You know, even if the kindergarten teachers have to, be in their current position, places for the
Right.
next, until Christmas break or something like that. It doesn't have to be a full year that we're, inconveniencing them. So.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we'll know better once we get the testing done.
So I was just had some other comments on a few of the other, so that first off, appreciate seeing the way that you've worked out with the summer programs and then reaching out to different people and really trying to continue these conversations quickly so that we can make sure we're trying to get things addressed. Everyone recognizing how time sensitive this is. It's very helpful to see laid out here general dates, like of which things are going to be targeted when. So I can see you've done some good, like, overall kind of understanding. The thing that I feel like will be, this is kind of when an actual like work plan that they could follow. I don't see here, and I know this is something that we have to do, like, so you have some target dates, you have some things, but to lay out, like, so the recommendations, laying out exactly what's going to be done when and in which locations, so that you can keep track and monitor your progress and know when you're getting behind. I find, like, so for instance, when we're in the work that we do, if we develop enrollment tables for how many people we're enrolling in different projects, you have a target number and you have that, you lay that out exactly as you want it to be, and you check on it every week. Everyone gets together, you see how you're doing. If you're falling behind, you've been monitoring that and you know exactly how to move it forward. So I imagine some of this would be work that happens on the town side. I know that for instance, in my husband's landscape work, so pointing back more to this kind of area, he does kind of the overall conceptual, this is what it could look like in the general idea, but then you get down to someone having in their hand what they need so that they could actually follow it step by step and do the work. And I think that's what we don't have right now, and that piece is what's going to be needed to make sure that we get to the end point. Like, you start with, we need by 7:15, 8:15, when we need it by 8:12.
Yeah, right.
Teachers have access to the rooms, right?
Yeah, you work backwards.
And then you work backwards, and you
Right.
say, so if we're going to do that by 8:12, then when do we need to do what by, and what do we do that then needs to sit, and then we go over here and we start working on this while that's sitting, or whatever it is that needs to happen. So that, because I can see how the town, they have other things that they need to be doing too, right? So if we're pulling from the town, it's also making sure that they're considering if they need to be pulled for somewhere else, that we're really have that laid out. This is a great foundation for that, but that's a different level of detail that is an actual executable work plan that can be used for monitoring and tracking. And I think that being able to do that, I've actually had some conversation with GM Future committee members, and the idea of having like by location so that you can see both that, which very quickly scan, so that people, exactly where you're going to be when, and for the programs too, in case something needs to shift, because clearly programs are happening. And then also by task. And so I think something that's really starts to drill down more, I'm not saying that this is what you need to do, but.
Well, so just so you know, the town administrator and I have met twice or 3 times in the last 2 weeks. Some of the things that the school council has been working on, like cleaning the basement, took a while for us to meet. We found a location to move some of the stuff, but we met with the head custodian and the assistant facilities manager several times now, and So I will continue to talk to him about how the town and school can bridge that and get that plan in place, something,
Yeah, I'm
a work
recognizing
plan,
that we
at your
don't
point.
have a facilities director.
Right, we have a
now.
resignation right now, but so that's why the town administrator has
Yeah.
the oversight of it, and he has been very receptive and working with me, so I want to give him kudos, because,
Yeah.
there were some concerns, and from the school council's perspective about the basement, and I think we're starting to see that things are getting moved out of there now, some of the old furniture that was stored there. Things are happening, and I owe that to the town administrator, so I want to give him kudos, but I will also talk to him about laying out a work plan.
Yeah, and I'm sure he understands what, when you say that,
Yeah.
he'll understand what that means, but
Yeah.
it would be great to hear about that and know by when, because that's another kind of time-sensitive, being able to lay out your resources and see when you'll be able to use whom and in what capacity. There may be some things on this list too that need only like one or two people at a time versus,
So, yeah,
that-
so some of that is still being developed, so like, one of the plans that we've talked about, Michelle felt that we should get a contractor in to do a deep cleaning. So this week, she's been bringing in contractors to get quotes on what that will be. She hasn't got all the quotes, we haven't figured it out yet. She's working on that, so those are the
Right.
pieces that will fall
Definitely.
together and become part of the work plan, and say, definitely, we've hired this contractor, and they can do it on this date. Right now, there's some tentative target dates for
Yeah.
that, but you want, this contractor's coming at this date. The town is coming on this date,
yeah.
right?
yeah.
The custodians are doing this on this date.
And of course, it ends up, as
Because you
everything
can't hold
does.
people accountable
But-
unless you
Yeah.
have dates.
And then it changes, but then you're monitoring it and
Right.
and then you tweak as you go along as opposed to, and that gives everyone a best chance in all heck of getting to that 8/12 date,
Correct.
which is what we want to do.
Correct. And the other thing is, some of the conversations, like with the custodians and the team there, some of these are purposely left empty so that they could be doing buffing and waxing in this area when other stuff
Yeah.
is going on at the same time.
Yeah, I
That's
can-
not noted here, but that's exactly what you're talking about, is
It is.
that thought has been going into it, and that's
Can tell
part of the
that has
reason.
been going
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Yeah.
So now the question is, how do we quantify it so that everybody has a work plan and we don't let it slip?
Yeah, and so that what you have, like, so literally I could go in and do the work
Right,
if I needed to. Like, I'd be able to look at them and be like, here we go. I'm in there.
Is training the custodians part of that plan as well? Because I think that in terms of what we have found that has been troublesome hygienically needs to be addressed. And I know that there are some rooms that, for instance, when they wax and polish in the summer, sometimes furniture isn't even moved and it just gets waxed and polished around that. So I think there needs to be sort of maybe even a workshop held for our custodians just to go over what needs to be done and keeping, once it's deep cleaned, keeping it clean.
So we could talk about to the assistant, well, and also the town administrator shared with me that he's working on hiring, replacing the DPW/facilities manager/tree warden.
That will have a much better understanding
So-
of what they do for.
Yeah, yeah.
different roles.
So I think that's
Yeah.
for whoever the new person comes
Okay.
in. I think that's something that we have to let them know is a concern,
Okay.
so that we can keep the building in better shape.
Yep.
And I had also heard from Jennifer Gladette that there's going to be, because we were having this conversation the other day, that when a person leaves, all of a sudden, the things that were in place fall down. And she said that in each classroom, there's going to be sort of like duties, like, teacher, at the end of the day, get rid of your trash, or custodian, this is what you're supposed to do, that kind of thing. So that will help a little bit, too, because there just seems to be a lot of in-between of whose responsibility is what.
I think that's going to be
Yeah,
a
yeah.
large task for whoever's responsible for the custodians, and we're actually working on that as part of the MOU and part of other, there's a lot of moving pieces on that, because it has changed over the years a little bit as far as who's supervising whom, and we have to quantify that and then give them those early tasks.
And just put it all in writing, so that no matter who
Yep.
steps in, they know what their marching orders are. So basically, what you were talking about is project manager. Who is going to be the project manager of this? Is it you, Bob, or is it, so if things fall apart, we have somebody to point to? Is it you,
Put it back
or
together.
is it?
Well,
Is-
it's complicated because of the previous agreements, the previous funding of different areas.
But I mean, just this Green Meadow, just getting us to open
Oh, check.
August 12th.
Yeah.
Is sort of, because my,
I'm more than happy to
Okay, 'cause-
put together the work
yeah.
plan and coordinate the people and
Okay.
get as much information out to you and to the public as possible.
okay, because, we're hearing different, Michelle's going to do this and such and
Yep.
such and that, but it's sort of like just to have it funnel to one person, so
Yep.
that one person is making sure that everything's happening. So, okay, good.
Anything else?
Did we, yeah, we already voted, right?
We did.
So I
We
guess,
voted.
yeah, I
Yep,
think we're
we're
good.
Yeah.
Now to the Green Meadow Future Committee update.
Where would you like us? Up here?
Whatever you'd like.
Here.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. So the last time we were here, we updated the school committee and the members of the public that were present and staff on the report, our last report, in which it was the combination of the first visit that we did where we toured the pre-K and K-wing, as well as the rest of the school. Since then, we got back and took a look at the basement and the office area, two areas that we wanted to do a little more work within. The office area we hadn't really checked out at all. In the basement we had looked at, but wanted to go back in to look at some other items down there. So briefly, the office, I didn't find anything major in that area. What I did find, and it's just a summary of the findings, I guess approximately 5 years, 2013-ish, there was a broken pipe above, caused some flooding. So it actually took out the ceiling and the floors. So there wasn't much left from the original building materials. So that's actually, I guess, a bit of a blessing. I did note, and the O'Hara report covers this, but just for people's information, there is 12 by 12 asbestos floor tiling in the, they call it the safe room, vault room, storage, records room, whatever you want to call it. It's got a big safe in it. The reason that I point that out is that a lot of people assume, rightfully so, 9-inch by 9-inch tiles are asbestos, and 12 by 12s, oftentimes people will assume those are not. But in some cases they are, and this is one of those cases, so I just wanted to point that out. Beyond that, the office area is interesting. It's been cut up over the years, so there is, I believe, some air balancing issues. The staff bathroom, the exhaust fan louver was shut, and very shut. Required some mechanical agitation, professional way of saying I really had to pull on it hard to get the damper to open so that we could restore exhaust into that bathroom, which staff reported was quite disturbing prior to that. So we got a little airflow going in there. The other thing I did notice was in Mrs. Dankner's room, I haven't told her yet because she's out, but she has a file cabinet up against the wall blocking her exhaust, and talking to staff, it's been there a very, very long time. So she has no air going out. And her office, she's a lucky winner. She's the one with the univent that has the plantings directly against the intake. So she has kind of smelly, dirty air coming in and no air going out. So that was something that we looked at in there. Beyond that, there wasn't anything major in the office. We went into the mechanical room and the boiler room. So a couple things of note. Dr. Girardi pointed out that they've already started to work on getting the equipment and furniture out of those spaces. Really not supposed to be an area where you store equipment or materials. And quite frankly, kind of a rule of thumb is that if you're gonna keep something in an area like that for more than a few weeks, you're probably never gonna use it again. It's just, that tends to be the reality. It's like the stuff you put in your attic. Maybe some of us go up and use it once in a while, but for the most part, it's a place that stuff goes until you do a big cleaning. So that stuff is already being removed. We did also get word that the intake for the boiler room, that area has been cleaned out. I haven't had a chance to go by and check it out, but I appreciate that. And the other thing that I wanted to take another look at was the air handling unit that's down there. So that, just to refresh people's mind, is the one that serves the cafeteria and the hallways. What I did note in opening up the access panels on the supply and return ducts, the actual, and I have pictures of this will be in the report, but the filters have been changed quite recently, as evident by their condition, but the fiberglass filter itself had literally failed and fallen out. This is one of my pet peeves with fiberglass filters, is that they're very, very inexpensive and they're not sturdy. So especially in large air handling units, they tend to get sucked out and they just fall apart. In this case, it appears as though it never really even got a chance to do what it was supposed to do, because it probably failed as soon as the air handler was turned back on. The other thing that I noted, and this is just a general comment, and it was one of our recommendations, we're going to get kind of our next phase of recommendations is going to be more about policy, procedure, protocols, good practices. It's going to be less about specific items. But one of the things I noted when I was down there was, on the day that I visited, Excel was in the cafeteria. I believe it was a rainy day, so there were a lot of kids in there. The air handler was off. It was just scheduled to be off. There's a lot of equipment that seems to be scheduled to be off at different times. And part of the retro commissioning process, where you go back and you look at your building management system and your HVAC, is to make sure that things are running when the building is occupied, and that the right things are running when the building is occupied. Because if you're not, as I've talked in previous school committee meetings, if you're not exchanging that air, at best case, what you're doing is you're just having a stale, kind of stinky environment, and one that's not conducive to learning and having a great time and being a pleasant place to work. So kind of one of those low-hanging fruit items that really is, it costs nothing, is some retro commissioning. One of the requests I'm going to be making to the facilities team is to see if I can get read-only access to the building management system. Retro commissioning is something that I've been trained to do. I'm happy to offer those services to the town. It is not cheap if you were to go outside for that, so it's something I'd be happy to do. And again, costs nothing. So, and I know Megan's going to talk about a number of other things. The only other thing that I wanted to point out was, again, I will say thank you very much to everybody that came out and supported us for Article 3. It's going to allow us to do a number of things. One of the things that I believe I mentioned at the last meeting is that as part of that envelope study, we want to get in and do some additional analysis in the pre-K, K-wing, but other areas throughout the schools. And one of the recommendations, if folks look at this sheet, it's not numbered, but we state in here where the walls have been wetted, we want to perform test cuts to ensure no mold growth within the wall cavity. And I had mentioned at our last Green Meadow Future Committee meeting that I had suggested we do some of those areas within the pre-K and K-wing. And granted, there's not an awful lot of drywall to test, but anything that's not brick or masonry, it's a good idea to get a couple samples just to make sure that we know what's going on back there. It's very inexpensive. The average cost to cut it and then restore it is less than $10. So even in areas where you think that there's a low likelihood that there's an issue, I think it's money well spent, if nothing else, for peace of mind. And if you're really strategic, you can do it in areas where people will really never see it again. You pull a bookcase out, it doesn't have to look super pretty when you're done because it's going to get buried again. So that's big picture on that. Go ahead. I'll swap. Yeah.
Okay.
So this was great that we got some comments. Tim spent some time addressing our recommendations and giving us an idea of, where they're fitting into their plan. And so that was helpful to see. And if we need to give some more information to him. So we'll be reviewing, we already reviewed them, but getting back to him if there's any loose ends that need to be tied up there. So that was great. So thank you to him for that. And you guys already talked about this, but this is also great step in the right direction to just reinforce that, how are we gonna, so much to do. How are we gonna do it all? So, yeah, and I'm happy to provide a template for a work plan if that's helpful in terms of that more detail that you mentioned. So.
I know
yeah,
you,
go
do you
ahead.
mind interrupting?
Yeah, no.
So I think that Megan seems to have an idea of something that might be useful. If you don't
Yeah.
mind, she could just throw something your way visually. Like, for me, if someone mentions it, it's just so much easier to see it visually. So I don't know if that would
Sure.
be useful.
Yeah, okay,
But-
great. I'll send that over. And then procedural, we're still interested in school dude and just moving forward, how we're gonna, what is that procedure? And I know there's still discussion in terms of between the town and the school, but what are the roles, within the school? What does that process look like to align with the software? So we'd like to talk more about that and understand that, so that, again, moving forward, we just have that level of comfort and understanding of how we're gonna, make different, paths moving forward, and so, great.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, can I add two other things? Sure. I can be quite loud if you want. I don't, all right. All right, thank you. So just two other things that Megan just reminded me of. So one thing, listening to the conversation that we had about the plans for the summer, the thing I would stress is as you break this schedule out into individual components, I would recommend identifying an individual project manager for each component. All due respect to the superintendent, I don't think it's appropriate that the superintendent themselves be responsible for the project management. Ultimately, you would be, but you need point people to contact on each one of these, the actual boots on the ground. We need people in the field actually making sure this is getting done and getting done correctly. So that's just a suggestion. And then the other thing that you mentioned that made me think of something is that I don't think it's, so we were talking about training. So we're going to make a lot of recommendations in this next go-around about, as I mentioned, policies, procedures, protocols, training. And I recognize that we're in flux right now, that we have lost our facilities director / DPW commissioner / many slashes. The reality is that's going to take time to find the right candidate. And quite frankly, when that person gets on, they're probably going to be focused on DPW. And they have a collateral duty, which is facilities, and that responsibility is the entire town. So while we're working on the MOU to figure out how that's all broken up, I think it's important not to use that as an excuse for not starting that training process and not starting to develop policies and procedures and creating systems of accountability. I just think that there's no time like the present to try to improve.
So I guess one thing I do have then, that makes me think of, so the MOU, I guess that to me is kind of this, the MOU. It's just like, it doesn't, I'm not understanding, I think that will help get a sense of kind of the again, it's more like the conceptually, which domains belong to whom. And I think what you're talking about with like school dude and training and accountability is more of workflow of, okay, who is entering, who reports what to whom, how do we make sure there's no gaps in the system where a piece of information ends up sitting in school dude for 3 weeks and no one knows it and it gets lost, or they don't know the monitoring, tracking systems and who's doing that and ensuring that those pieces, is that?
So we have to quantify that.
Yeah.
And even
Yeah.
tonight, I can tell you that our assistant facilities director, our head custodian, and our
Could you speak right into the
oh,
microphone?
yeah, that's right. So even tonight, I know that our director of finance, the assistant facilities director, and the head custodian all are trained on school dude, all have a plan to train staff on the first day of school is a PD day for teachers. So there is plans to do that kind of training for the staff. They're trained. Now, the question is, you also want to quantify as far as the custodians, whether they're trained, how they're trained, and how they are. And my understanding is that they will be trained well before that, and that they'll be able to communicate. So when a teacher puts in a work order, the custodian can say, I've got 10 work orders, yours will be done tomorrow morning first thing, or whatever. And then tomorrow morning, the custodian can type into School Dude, just got to it, just so you know, I actually found, mice droppings or something, and I cleaned it up, or whatever the issue is. But that, there'll be a dialogue. School Dude allows for a dialogue between the person who put the work order in and the custodians. Is that, Josh, accurate?
So,
And so the key is to get those people trained, but I know that they're working on that training plan, and now you just would like to see it in writing so that there's a quantifiable training plan, and that this process is in place when we need it.
yeah, so in my experience implementing software, like training is really like the very, very last step. So what I am interested in seeing is a workflow document that it describes the process and the flow, the business process. So you would have something, who is the person that's going to be entering the information into School Dude? So having a clear understanding, is that all the teachers are going to do that themselves? Is that going to be a few point people that teachers are going to go to, and then, so just clarifying how does it originate? And then the time frame in which we would expect that to be acknowledged, and by who, how is it routed, what are the roles of the different people in terms of their skill sets and what their training is. So do all the custodians have the same responsibilities? Are there specialized responsibilities? How would you route the different requests to the people that are qualified in order to do them? And then how are we verifying that the work is getting done? So whether it's a picture, certain requests require a picture to be attached, or if it's another level of verification by a supervisor, which requests would qualify for those different scenarios. And then the escalation piece. So and then what happens if that doesn't happen? How are we, where are the notifications in terms of this work order was entered a week ago, and who does, and it hasn't been done yet, who does that go to? So all of those, I could go on. You can tell I really like this.
It's process. It's all process.
So I think that is what our committee would like to see all mapped out, so that we have a clear understanding before, because I just want to avoid a situation in which we train on a process that we're not all in agreement that this is kind of the best, this is what we want to do. I don't want to get to that point. So.
Natasha?
Hi. Sorry, I just wanted to echo, because we did have a big discussion about this at the last Green Meadows School Council meeting, and exactly that point, the business process, I think, was really important to understand before we're going in training. One of the points that was brought up was the concern that having too many people have access to School Dude could create redundant tickets and could then bottleneck services from being done, because there are so many multiple pieces. So a consideration that Mary Beth had mentioned was utilizing the secretary possibly as a person who has access to the system, maybe teachers or however, again, conversations, but they can enter in, the information. Obviously, those conversations before we're going out training everyone, I think, need to be first had to make sure it's an efficient process. And I think also because we know School Dude is going to help us create a better historical record of maintenance, we don't want to fudge that information with a whole inflated information of things that might not be 4 tickets for one same item, and then our data of analyzing, why are we having this, really 3 of them are the same thing. So that was something that was really focused on to get a better understanding with School Dude, is the process of how we envision it to be implemented before we go out and give everyone access to it, and that. So I just wanted to stress that piece a little bit. And the other part, we're talking about the town. I know there's a lot of frustration about getting, sharing with the town actions that needed to happen. And, maybe the responsiveness is not as desired to that. Maybe a consideration to be made, if for one, we need to give them a deadline on when something needs to be done by, instead of them setting a deadline. I think we need to start setting our own deadlines on this needs to be done by this date, because we do have our more own pressing issue of opening up in time. So some of the things that I'm seeing in here, like summer project, that's very vague to me and not really how we need to be planning. We need to have, like, this needs to be done by July 31st, or, when is it going to be done by? Very strategic. And if they're not able to, for whatever reason, resources, then we need to maybe consider thinking of a third-party vendor to come in and do some of the things that they are not able to do, and figure out conversation around that, because we do have our own needed and very urgent deadlines that need to be met, and so the vagueness about when that happens needs to be cleared up, and how we can plan alternatively if they're not able to meet that resource.
Thank you. One of the things that I wanted to follow up on that part of it is whether or not somebody has actually contacted anybody at Assabet for any of the, painting, plumbing, that kind of stuff, because I know that Dawn had mentioned it before she left, so I wasn't sure if somebody had done that.
I can check with Michelle. She's very well connected to our vocational
Yeah.
schools.
Unfortunately, they don't work during the summer.
Oh, sure.
I know the Boys and Girls Club has tried. You almost have to put in your request early in the year to schedule them in, but I don't know.
I wonder if this
By the
is,
end of June?
well, I wonder if this would be one of those extenuating circumstances that maybe we could, it doesn't, it certainly doesn't hurt to try, so.
I can have Michelle reach out to them. She
Yeah,
knows them very well.
okay. And I had a question on what's the plan going forward for the custodian, the talking between us and the town and the MOU, and when do you foresee that that's going to be kind of something?
So we have to, again, I've been meeting with the town administrator, but basically, the preliminary meetings were with the town administrators and the school department attorney and the town attorney to make sure that we were trying to do things legally, and that's how we found out about the 37M, and now we're doing things the right way. The next level we talked about was actually getting the staff together and getting input from them. So the town administrator and I have talked about getting the custodial leaders and those sort of folks together in the conversation, because there are several different ways that this sharing of resources could go. Quite frankly, there's several different ways. I'd rather not get into it until we actually talk to the staff and get their input. But there are some ideas that we've already generated, but we'd like to get the input from them before we get the MOU together. So that is the next step, a meeting with constituents to find,
And when do you think that will happen?
I know it's not on the books yet, but that's our goal, to do that next, so.
Bob, I just want to mention something. In your talks with DPW and figuring out the MOU, School Dude does not interface with the program that Aaron used in the DPW. It's a completely different program. So there will need to be a protocol established in order for the DPW to follow up on what is being tracked on School Dude.
Okay.
And then I just had one other question about the 50,000, whether or not you had an update on where Greg was at with.
So actually, Josh and I have been emailing Greg. Josh has been a great asset to the town because he has so much experience in this area. And we're looking at writing I believe the town administrator is looking at the RFQ to get that put together. And then we have the money now because we have the money in the different pots, but some of it was approved at annual town meeting. So it's the writing of the RFQ, which I think Josh has done a majority of that anyway for us and drafted a draft, but we have to get it approved. The town administrator has to review it and approve it, and then we have to move forward. Josh, would you like to?
I was just going to say, so I had to make up dates when I there's certain elements that I can't.
Right.
Greg
That
has to
be
work
filled
through,
out.
yeah.
Right, so Greg's going to look at that, but literally this week, Josh and I and Greg were in email conversations about that.
Yeah.
What would be your best estimate? Because I know you've been having a real sense of urgency, obviously, on that. What do you think in best case?
So it takes a week to get into the central registry. So as soon as Greg is comfortable releasing it, it gets advertised, takes a week in the central registry, 2 weeks of advertising, bids open, contract takes a week to 2 weeks to process, and then you can get started. Money's in place, so you could give a binding notice to proceed while the contract is working its way through. So, yeah, and like I said, I would recommend getting the consultant on board and front-loading the structural and any additional environmental testing that we want to get done. Because really what we're trying to establish is there anything that's going to either prevent us from opening in the fall or require additional work prior to opening in the fall. The rest of it needs to move quickly, but it can be afterwards or parallel path. And just so that folks know, the RFQ, the way it was written, even though we're hyper-focused on the issues at Green Meadow, what I wrote is an on-call request for qualifications for design services for any purpose in the town. So what that means is that we can use it for this, and we can use it for an ADA ramp, or we can use it for a bathroom renovation project. It doesn't commit us to any funds, and it's a 3-year contract with 2 one-year renewals, and you can pull in more than one architectural firm under that contract, so you can shop jobs around too.
I guess I would just have one comment that, it's looking more and more like we are definitely heading toward a new elementary school, and I just want to make sure that we're keeping a separate file of all of these documents and that to really give us the...
Mary, can you speak into the microphone?
I'm sorry. So that we really have a lot of justification, that nothing gets lost again. So.
It's a big pile that we just gave to Mike
Right.
Guzzo, but we have all that documentation, so, yeah.
Do you mind if I ask him? Okay, I don't want to jump ahead of anyone. So I guess one of the things I'm wondering is we're talking about policies, procedures, obviously moving forward with starting the work. Can this be happening, like when do you think would be good to start seeing they have to work on the MOU for the general overall domain of things? I'm just wondering, you're going to be putting out some recommendations on that, so what would you recommend as far as the timeline? By when do we need to have those in place in order for it to work? Because there would then be training, there would be some things that need to happen ahead of the new school year.
So what would be extremely helpful, and I don't want to overstep, but it would be great if we could get copies of all of the existing policies, procedures, and protocols for everything facility related in the superintendent's office. That would give us a sense as to where what we currently have, and then we can talk about where we need to grow, and what policies may or may not exist or may need to be expanded upon.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, quite frankly, they should all be there already. So, to answer your question right away.
And then in terms of, having a starting point, like Josh mentioned, but, and then also, I mean, when I implement software, I like to include the people that are going to be using the software when we're designing the process so that we address any concerns or, and get their input on how they think it should be used. So that's what I do. I always use people up front, and whether it's a few people. So I would, I think it would be great to have. Yeah, of course, in testing, but like even the initial requirements in terms of like, this is our idea of what the process is going to be with School Dude, and then hear what they have to say about that, and then have that discussion. So I would like to have that as soon as it's almost summer, so I'd love to have it soon so that before the teachers are not in the building. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know if School Dude is it an app? Like, could you have it on your phone? So maybe like the facilities on the town side could actually have it on their phone, and that way.
And I think that was, it's an app, and I think that's what when Tim and Michelle went to training, and I think that there was still discussion about whether it was going to be like a named user and what devices the custodians were going to use. So like all of those details, I think, are really important to understand before the end of the school year, so that we have, so that we inspire confidence, number one, and then we get everybody on board and they have an idea of, okay, when I get back, now I'm going to be trained on this, and we're all on the same page that this is what the process is going to be. I don't want anybody to be surprised about what the process, and then have like legitimate issues at training time, because then now we're behind the 8 ball, so.
Would you like Colleen to doodle the two of you and Tim and Michelle so that you can all get together and start doing that work? And I think that would be a great thing. So Colleen, can we doodle the 4 of them so that they can get together and start that work?
Great, thank you,
Yeah, I'm also, so we were just doing, for something totally different, we're developing a data collection system, and we were working with about 100 people that are going to be entering into the system, and we did some early testing, some beta testing, and then some pilot testing, and all through that process. So if you work backwards, so 8/12, the teachers enter the building and start using it, it might be nice if there's others that are able to try test it out, that the custodian's already up to speed by then, so they could help out. And there are others that are doing some mock testing so that you can just see if it's working, or whatever it may be, so that you can make sure that processes are where you want them to be, so the teachers can hit the ground running when they come back in. And again, we have a lot of different things going on, so that's just as much as we could do of some of that. I could just see that really helping. And I'm sure that you had some of those ideas in mind as best practices in any case, but just mentioning that.
Do you want to make a comment about that?
So, School Dude is a wonderful product, but there is a lot of work to implement.
Yeah.
The accounting, or the user routing is a major element.
Yeah.
So just a quick scenario. Let's say, for instance, we decide that we're going to have teachers have the ability to enter work orders, which many districts start with. That means that you have to set up an individual work order route for every single teacher. And each teacher, and then within each of those, you may have as many as 50 to 100 individual categories of work that would be requested. Each one of those have individual routing components. So they would route to somebody else. And based on that, that might have a different supervisor who needs to approve it. If that is, it takes some time to get that right, but if that is done correctly, it's like a well-oiled machine. So the front end takes some time, but once it's established, it's in a really good spot. To your point, it is really good, and almost every district does this, which is why I think Michelle and Tim went out to begin with, is it really is set up to train the trainer kind of situation. So Michelle and Tim come back, they train the custodians. The custodians then understand it, they're able to help others. The principals, the secretaries, and the teachers understand it. Just that. And then I think to reiterate what Lydia was saying is that Mara was right. Like the app certainly I think would help, but we need to make sure if the DP, and I'm giving you a scenario, if the DPW foreman has been using the same software system for the last 15 years and every day he or she comes in and checks that and goes out and does their work, you need to massage this process so that that's layered in, so that that system of checks and balances occurs. And you don't want it to become so cumbersome using 2 different platforms that, I mean, it's just natural. If it's difficult, it's not going to run smooth. So,
Does it make any sense for maybe the head custodian to meet with the 4 of you also, or?
Oh, yeah, because he was
doesn't
trained
that
as well.
seem to
Kyle.
make sense?
oh, Kyle, yeah.
I'm pretty certain Kyle was also trained, so
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
we'll add Kyle to the mix.
And I can't imagine that some of these processes couldn't be useful throughout the town for having workflow, that if we're developing some best practices, that would actually be useful in general.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, definitely. And the other thing I think is important is that, let's just be honest, the last 6 months, there's some strained relationships. It's just the reality. And it might be a good opportunity to bring everybody back in and help continue to mend fences and reopen lines of communication so that everybody understands that we're all just trying to get our job done, get our work done, and make things better. So.
That we talked about at our joint meeting was having service level agreements also. Part of this is a contingent piece so that when something is entered into school dude, that at some point there's an expectation of how long that work order is expected to be done, what is the responsiveness to that, so that the school leadership, whoever that may be, is empowered to then follow up and how do we escalate from there. So I think that was the other piece that and I forgot to mention earlier, that was important, that once we implement it, then what, right? How long does it take? So having some service level agreements standardized before we implement this would be important to make it successful.
Yeah, we have to put the information in so that we get good information out, so, yeah. And the other thing, anything on that, do you have anything else on that? Are we good on school dude and the plan to put a process together? Okay. The other thing that I had was, I know that Michelle is getting quotes for deep cleaning, and I think there's a question about what does that look like? What is that deep cleaning? So if we could just get some more context into just some more details about what that is, I think that would help staff have a better idea. And then also what those firms are expecting the space to be prepared, how those firms would expect the spaces to be prepared, because the teachers need, they need time in order to prepare their classrooms. If there's special requirements that the cleaning, that the outside cleaning crew is going to need to be able to do that deep cleaning, then we need to make sure that the teachers have enough time in order to organize their materials and secure them in a way that they're comfortable coming back in, so.
That's actually a good thought. So from what Jennifer had said the last meeting, the pods are going to be emptied into 2 rear rooms of kindergarten, and then all of the materials are going to be brought by the teachers. They're going to figure out what belongs to who. And after they get everything into their classroom, is that when the deep cleaning is going to happen, or is the deep cleaning for all of those materials in the pods?
No, the deep cleaning will be for the whole building.
Oh, right, okay. But I'm thinking about those items that have been in the pods.
They
Where
were
did
cleaned,
those-
they were actually decontaminated and cleaned before they went into the pods.
Before they went in? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good to know.
That's
Thank
my
you.
understanding.
Okay.
Anything else? Josh, do you have anything else?
No, I think that's it. Just on the deep cleaning, sorry, just one quick question. On the deep cleaning, as Meg was asking kind of what that is, but specifically, are they going to be stripping and waxing floors? Is the contract
So I
cleaner
think
doing that?
they're going to be cleaning surfaces that don't appear to have been cleaned for a long time. Like, that building has, like,
Yep.
eaves and places that are very high and probably haven't been cleaned. They're going to be cleaning, but I believe that the custodians will still be doing the stripping and the waxing, because that's what they do, and they have the supplies to do that.
Okay.
How about the cleaning?
So would it be, once we have a vendor in place, they'd be able to detail out what they'll do? Or do you have something ahead of time that you're using to go by? How do you know?
I think right now, Michelle's just getting quotes on how it get done and when they can do it.
Yeah.
Because different companies have different, times when they can get the
Yeah.
work done too. That's part of the process.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For your ongoing work and for the whole committee, please.
Now we'll move into citizens' comments.
I wanted to have a question about the summer schedule. I know it was talked about that would be shared with the Green Meadow community, and I wanted to see, Dr. Doherty, when that would be circulated, the schedule for the summer.
This program?
Yeah, the one that we received this evening, the summer use, if that could be maybe emailed to the Green Meadow community about
Well, Well, I shared it with I shared it with the leadership on Monday, and then we can work on how it gets to
Okay.
the rank and file. But we
Yeah,
can
if you
share it.
can
I shared
guarantee
with
that it
them
gets out.
initially, so we could talk about what the, what the plan's going to be.
Yeah, I know that the last meeting, which I know you weren't here for, Jen Goday mentioned that it was going to be going out, and so I just wanted to make sure it's not getting kicked down, the can's not getting kicked down.
Yeah, we had talked about it going out to the parents and that too, when it was to this point, so
Okay.
that they have plenty of lead time to understand.
Right, because there's some that are, going to be at Fowler, so just for like certain weeks, so I thought it'd be good to, I don't know if it makes sense to even think about utilizing the calendar for the town. I mean, the school calendar, like Excel, if that helps, I don't know, because people can see it on their phone, like Fowler this week or whatever for those random, I don't know, just, but I think there's just some communication to the community.
Before you move on,
Yeah.
I'm seeing here that this says special education ESY, and then on here it says SPED EYS.
Oh, okay.
So
We can get that
whichever
fixed.
way
Yeah,
it's
no,
supposed to be.
it's ESY.
Okay. Go ahead, Natasha.
Yeah. So I just wanted to thank Josh and Megan for coming to the Green Meadow School Council meeting the other day. I know that there was a lot of conversations, and they were very helpful to give some insight, so it was appreciated, especially since Donna has not been in, so there's been kind of a void that they've been helpful to kind of get information, so that was great. And I think I may have missed this, I heard Josh speaking possibly, but the RFP for the 50K, is that already going out, or?
So Josh and I and the town administrator have been working on it this week.
Okay. Do you know
But
when?
ultimately, he's the person who would approve the RFP and write it because of the process, so he would be the one to do that,
Town, Greg?
the town administrator, correct?
Do you know when that will happen?
Again, we've been
Say the next
emailing.
week,
'cause-
right?
Is it next week? The
Next week is when it's
Well,
going to
I don't know. I just
Start the
know that
process.
we, again, there was some confusion about which RFQ, because we had been given a bunch of drafts and different ideas, but
Okay.
then Josh was able to clear that up 2 days ago, so I'm not sure where it stands at this point.
Yeah, Greg Johnson's the only MCPPO.
That's right. That's what I was looking
In the
for.
town, so by law, he's
He has to be the one.
He has to be the one.
Okay, and so we don't have a date. I guess what I would want to know is when we can get from Greg an understanding of when he's going to send that out, or what his timeline is.
I can ask.
Thank you. And the information for School Dude was great, I appreciate that, but I just want to stress, because that is something that I think it's great in idea, but it can be, as we've seen with the Tyler system, with the website rollout, you don't have people trained and the right things happening, a great success can fizzle very quickly, especially during a period where you're onboarding or everyone's coming back into school. So I'd like to make sure we're not repeating history and learning, to make sure that we're getting a little bit more prepared and training for those things. The 50,000, again, just to go back to that, Bob, you mentioned, and I don't know if this was there was some discussion about where that's coming from. You mentioned it coming from the 610,
Well,
and,
a portion of it's from the 610, and the other portion is from, Josh, you can help me, there was $100,000 that was allocated for something else, and there's money left in that, correct?
No, none of it's coming from the 610.
Oh.
Approximately $36,000 is coming from the previous authorization circa 2010 of the $850,000, in which I believe 700 was turned back and 150 has been spent over time. The balance of $14,000 to $16,000 is going to be coming out of the $100,000 that was appropriated out of Article 3 for roof repairs, various roof repairs around town.
Thank you, I knew it was one of the appropriations last night allowed us to do it.
and the other comment I wanted to make is, I know that there was that $100,000 roof repairs that's supposed to go for the town, but having a better understanding of how much of that will actually be allocated for Green Meadow, if that's something that we can get clarity on, I think maybe sooner rather than later. So if there are some things that are discovered, we can maybe know what we can work with. And I don't know if that's Tim who decides that,
Well, originally it was Aaron, and my understanding was in their discussions, because we've been using the patch and pray method, it was leave it open because if the library needs a patch, then it could go to the library, but if not, then if it needs to go to the Green Meadows. So I don't think it was allocated specifically. I think it was left as an open-ended opportunity depending on where the town needed to use it. So I don't think there was any plan as far as specific
A certain percentage for Green Meadow or anything like that?
So if Green Meadow needs it all, then Green Meadow gets it all.
Okay, all right.
That's my understanding, but, again, we've had the transition, so it's hard to know. We'll have a new person in, then we'll work with them.
Yes. I also wanted to mention that I think the MOU is great in idea, and I think that's needed for long-term planning. I think it's not solving the immediate, and so I know we keep talking about the MOU, but, the immediate needs of, the efforts that it took to get like the leaves cleaned out, all of those things those are more immediate that need to happen before this MOU is going to be finalized, before we have a new person to fill that role with a DPW. And I just want to make sure that we're being realistic, in our view of how we feel that's going to affect us in the immediate. It's, I think, very minimal versus what it will be for future use or ideas. But it's only as good as if we have people who are following it. So, if it's on paper, great, but right now, I think there's an understanding, like, the efforts it took to get the leaves clean and the undergrading from the basement by that, I think, is not going to be solved by having an MOU. Those issues are still going to be ongoing. So I'm just wondering what more we can do to escalate those, or just because community has safety concerns, health concerns, and I think that if the responsiveness that we're not getting from the town, requesting to do some of these things like clearing by the univent intakes, vegetation, what is our next level of escalation that we need to take in order to be responsive to the needs that have been expressed to us?
So the MOU hopefully is going to quantify in writing the agreements that were in place, which is we actually reduced custodial staff and shifted those funds to the town, I think, Parks and Rec Department, so that the DPW director who oversees that as a bunch of other things would then be able to do the lining of because originally we had a custodian who the majority of his time was lining the sports fields, mowing the lawn, doing all those things. So we can't, I think what you're saying is we can't wait for the written agreement, even though there's history there that we know that we can identify in our collaborative meetings with the town, and however you choose to do that with the town. We have to identify there is history here. We now don't have the staff to do it. So we need to, in addition to having this written MOU, we still need these things to get done, and how are we going to facilitate that and make that faster? And I think that conversation would be good to have, and I don't know which venue.
Is it a school committee to Board of Selectmen meeting? Is it, I guess I want to, because it seems to be a serious, kind of coming into like a really serious issue that we need responsiveness, and if the model isn't the right model, then we need to think of what is a better model that will suit our schools.
So we had in the past liaisons to the Board of Selectmen, they had a liaison to us. I don't know if those two individuals, do we still have?
Justine was the Board of Selectmen to school committee.
Right, so I'm not sure who is the liaison or who would like to volunteer to do that right now. Lydia?
Yeah.
So I think reaching out to Justine St. John would be a good first step. And if you need my assistance, I'm happy to give you the history and share that with you and be in that meeting. I'd be happy to help.
Yeah, I think from an operational perspective, because Lydia can only, I think, do so much from a policy, but really it's about man-hours and resources, and that's something that you or Greg really need to make a decision on. If they're able to sustain this resource on a long term.
Me, Greg, you, and Justine get together as the liaisons and talk about that.
Okay. So I'm a little confused, though, because I thought when Megan and Josh were up here that they were going to be meeting with the head custodian and with Greg, and Was that only about School Dude and Michelle?
Yeah, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That was
just
focused
School
on
Dude.
School Dude.
Okay.
And
School
I think
Dude process.
Natasha's
All right.
bringing up a larger picture because,
Yes.
the school council had some concerns that were relayed, and it took a while to get the work done, and in fact, some people volunteered, some people in the audience volunteered.
Yeah, I
to do
think,
it, as
Dawn
opposed to
and
actually
her,
getting it done.
I think, went and cleaned up. So yes, I think
Yeah,
at some
yeah.
point,
So there's a process that's not
we have a
happening.
breakdown, and we have a need, and the need's not being met, and so, and the need is an urgent need for us, and so at what point do we say, okay, this is not working, we escalated, and what that chain of escalation is, and at what point do we say, we need to revisit this model and say, okay, if we can't, if the outsourcing of it by the town doing it is failing on a regular basis, at what point do we revisit and say, maybe we need to absorb those resources back for the school, even if it's a short-term basis, and say, okay, I don't know, a year, I don't know what the answer is, but those are the conversations I think we need to be thinking about a little bit more, and waiting for the MOU, I think is not going to really solve those things.
Well, this might help to write the MOU.
Yes.
Right? Like, if you start getting things in place, then it'll be obvious how you have to fix it, unless you're going to spend money on additional resources, whether they be on our side or their side. That this will help to quantify what the MOU will do as well. So I think it'll help drive that MOU writing as well.
Well, I think also defining at what point we make a decision and say, you know what, we need to go out somewhere else. We need to go outsource and say, okay, if we can't get it done by X, Y, and it's a health issue, then the agreement is we will outsource the services and bill back the town. I don't know what the answer, but that is something to be thrown out there. We need to have a point where we have to take back ownership of this is a need that we need met, and if it's not being met, then what is our recourse to then get it done to sustain our building and for our staff. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
All great ideas. I appreciate them, and I think it's good to get it moving because it's important.
Bob, what has been the policy in the past when we've had, because I know we've got Tim, and I know we haven't had this, facilities director that we've been sharing for a long, long time. That was.
So, yeah, before I was here, there was a facilities manager.
Right.
I think that needed to grow, and it kind of did grow, but that at some point, that job, and Josh kind of alluded to it, took on many other tasks.
Right.
And so one person can't do 3 different jobs really well, right? But that was the leadership, at that time, that was the thinking that could happen. And that's when I think things started to fall apart. So, but the agreement was, like I said, we shifted, Michelle, remembers when we actually shifted a salary over to the town side so that those services would be provided. And so we have to figure out, how can that work, to your point?
Yeah, I mean, we can't get leaves cleaned. I mean, that's kind of scary,
So-
It takes us a month to get leaves cleaned.
So,
To be devil's advocate, should we really be fighting for our own facilities director again? I mean, it just seems as though anybody that we put in that position to maintain 15 buildings, it's,
Well-
the problem with that is,
I know it's funding.
It is funding, and at this time of year, right? So
I know.
the town already built their budget, you already
Right,
built your
right.
budget. So we have to have an MOU to get through the rest of this year. At some point, then, I think that's certainly a very good discussion is, and maybe the MOU will work that all out, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I don't know that we could convince the town to do that until we tried out whatever we come up with.
Right.
And take a look at it. And I do wonder, triage, so you prioritize levels, and some things take longer to get to, and some things are more priority. And so if there's a way to tag those in the system so that you can decide what's a higher priority because it's wet and it needs to be taken care of right away, versus something that could take longer and someone knows it's going to be a few weeks before someone gets back to you. I think that's another way to help deal with resource
Prioritize.
allocation. But I'm sure that people know about that, so I don't feel like I have the
I also want to make a note that at one of the Board of Selectmen meetings, I believe it was 2 meetings ago, they discussed what had happened, transpired with Aaron and him leaving, and the difficulties that had occurred in overseeing all of the buildings plus the schools. And they did entertain the idea of maybe making it into 2 positions. So that, I think,
What
is,
2 positions?
well, I think one would be for facilities.
Separate,
Yeah, be
DPW instead of
separate.
FD2PW and then.
I think, I mean, again, it was thrown out there, and it hasn't been discussed at length, but I think it is,
They're thinking about it.
they're
as well.
entertaining it, yeah.
So,
2 quick things, sorry, that I forgot. Donna's been out, and she's on the Green Meadow Future Committee, and there's a concern that, our committee doesn't really have an administrator or somebody that's in the building at this moment. And I just wanted to let everybody know that she's been in contact with us on email, and her intention is to come to our next meeting. So if, anyway, so I just wanted
Donna's
to.
intention, you said.
Yeah, it's her intention to come to our next meeting.
Which is next Thursday.
It's next Thursday, yeah. So that was the one thing. The second thing is that, could we have, in the meeting that Colleen's going to doodle for us, could we have Dan Costello in that meeting as well? Because then we could have the role of a principal of operations and leadership in that conversation. So then we would have, even though it's not Green Meadow, it's, yeah, exactly. So all of the different roles, so we would have Dan, we would have Michelle and Tim, head custodian, and then Josh and I, and we could,
Well, and
So anyway.
ultimately, school duty is going to be for all 3 schools.
Right.
So we should almost
Right.
have Chuck there also. We should
Or
have
Kevin.
somebody.
Kevin's Eleanor.
Or Kevin,
Yeah.
yeah. But you, yeah, because ultimately that's.
yeah, and if you think that they both at first, or if it's a brainstorming, whatever you want, but I'm just thinking of that, of having representation of that role in that meeting could be helpful, so that we're not like, oh, we should have probably had them there, and then, yeah, thanks.
Hi, Ann Duddy, Green Meadow teacher. I just have a question about the map. So the special ed summer services ends on 8/8, and I believe that's a Thursday, if I read my calendar correctly. And then Friday through Sunday is going to be the cleaning of 8/9, 8/11. So I'm just kind of curious as how those classrooms are supposed to be packed up in that amount of time. And my only concern about that is because one of them is my classroom, and I just know that I pile a lot of stuff in the, on the bench, and I know we can't do that if there are kids in the room. For safety reasons, a lot of stuff gets piled. So the custodians just shift it from one side, shift it to another. And I know the kindergarten wing used to be the summer school wing, correct? Mm-hmm. And I think that was the problem. Those classrooms never really were able to get fully cleaned either because they were occupied. And now the time frame is real short because we're supposed to be back in to be able to work in our classrooms on the 12th. Cleaning is done on the 11th, but on the 8th, so that's a week, so that leaves, I think, Friday. So I was just to see how what that would look like. And then my other suggestion for the Spanish immersion is kind of on the same idea, where those classrooms, 1B, 1A, 1C, aren't going to be able to pack up, but yet you still have 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B, who are the Spanish immersion teachers. So to me, it would make sense to maybe have them stay in their classrooms so they're not moving curriculum back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for the summer. So they just stay where they are, and then the other classroom teachers can pack up, get their rooms deep cleaned, and then Spanish immersion will somewhat have their rooms packed up, but they know what they need and what they don't need. I won't know what the special ed summer school will need and what they won't need.
So I think, because Donna helped us put this together from her history of trying to make the big blocks so that the custodians could do big blocks of work, I can certainly run those 2, and you can run those 2, well, when hopefully we'll see her on Thursday.
Right, yeah. Sure.
But we can run those ideas by her, because there is logic there.
Right,
So-
and I thought at first, oh, it's the air conditioning, but only one of those classrooms
Yeah,
they're
so
moving
it's
to
not
has
that.
air conditioning, so it's
Yeah.
not that. I mean,
Yeah.
if they were all air conditioned, that would make sense, but there's only one classroom.
No, I think it was because she wanted to keep this block
Right,
open to get it
right.
clean, but I can see the logic in that, so.
Right.
Is there some, like, going to be staging areas also, like they're going to be moving?
I thought
Or
there was.
Lois is.
I don't know.
So,
I'm not sure. So they're just a thought, just to,
Yeah, no, I think
being
those are two
somebody
great
who
ideas.
packs up the classroom and stuff, it's kind of, it's not as easy as you think of just moving things. It's really, you have to take everything off, you pack everything, or wrap it, and I just want to make sure the summer school has access to what they need.
Yeah.
But then make sure the classrooms who are left do get that deep cleaning too.
Well, and it's a tight timeline.
It's a tight time, yeah, it is a
Yeah.
tight timeline. So I don't know if that timeline can even be moved, or what's that supposed to look like for that teacher to come back in the summer to pack up? I just want to make sure we know what that looks like. And then just a comment about the school dude, I think we should err on the side of caution of teachers. I'm okay with having access to it, but I don't necessarily think we should be the ones who kind of are responsible. So we do that with technology now. If there's a technology issue, we just shoot a ticket in. But we don't oversee the technology, so we're there if, we report an issue that we don't think the technology department is aware of. But I just don't want it to be the teachers, and I'm going to have to speak up for our secretary, which was also a cut position, and they're pretty maxed out, so to add another layer. And my biggest joke lately is, next thing you know, we're going to be driving the school buses. So I, again, don't mind having access to it, because I think we all want to pitch in, we all want to help and make sure, but I also don't want it to be where, okay, now, well, the teacher didn't report it, so I didn't know there was a leak, the teacher didn't report it. So I just want to make sure that that's not going to be the case, where because something didn't get reported, then...
Because you might not even have been aware of it.
Right, or, I'm thinking, this is what I have to get ready for my day, not, make sure before I leave, I check all my things to make sure everything's operating. But of course, if there's an issue, I had an issue today, and I called Jamie, he came right up. Because Kathy has access to a walkie-talkie and, things like that, I understand, but to do the day-to-day,
So like, you don't want to have to like look and monitor and try to see like, are there any leaks that I don't see? And this corner over here
Obviously,
that
if there's
I'm
an
never
issue,
in
we have
for?
access to school dude, that's great. But not necessarily be the one responsible for the maintenance of the building.
Yeah, no, I think
Reports.
it's very similar to IT, where it's a ticketing system.
Right.
So if you saw a problem, you would put it in. But the
Right.
point is, I think it's going to give you much more feedback.
Correct.
That this was done.
Right.
And then we talked about the possibility, if you're feeling like it's not done or you're not getting the feedback, then having an avenue for you to then escalate it.
Right, which is good.
Yeah,
I
I
just
think
didn't
that's
want
all-
it to be,
Yeah, you
falling
monitoring
on
or
the
doing the work.
teachers.
Yeah.
Right. Or the secretary. I want
Or
to
the
speak up
sec-
for
I agree with
Kathy.
you.
Kathy, I'm speaking up for
When
you.
that
Like
idea came up, I was
Kathy.
like, I can't imagine adding something, because Kathy does so much.
Right, Kathy does a
so,
lot,
yeah.
yes.
Anne, would it be worth considering having maybe a point person per teaching team, like per grade, or?
I don't know. I
Is
don't
that
want-
too much
yeah,
responsibility?
Yeah, I don't think, I wouldn't want to put that on
Okay.
a teacher, per se.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hi, Tiffany Kennedy, paraprofessional at Green Meadow. I have a couple things piggybacking off of Ann. The school dude, it would be nice if the paras had access to that as well. There's a lot of times we'll enter a classroom, either the teacher's absent, or she's busy, or he is busy doing things, and we happen to notice things, and it just takes time out of the day to say, hey, by the way, did you notice that over there? Can you enter it in? Might be, and I know too many cooks in the kitchen kind of muddles it up a little, but if there's a way that the paras could have access to it, that might be helpful.
I think it's part of that building process, so that's good input, to build it.
And along with this, thank you for the cleaning and renovation plan. I think this is helpful. If we could share this with all staff, not just the leaders, the team leaders that you met with, all teachers and paras, in an email or some sort. That might be useful. And the last thing, also, talking about the summer program, as Ann mentioned, it ends on 8/8. Deep cleaning is supposed to start 8/9. There's 7 rooms that are being utilized for the summer program, plus the OTPT room. Those will go all the way till 2 p.m. on that 8/8 date. Only four of those 7 rooms are occupied by general ed teachers. So that's only 3 rooms that are actually special ed teachers who will be packing up their own stuff. So that's a lot of rooms where it's unclear of who's going to be packing up what. In particular, the the 1G room, the Megan Bowden, Vivian Veros, that room. Their program also will end on 8/8, and they have that partition in the middle. So there needs to be some consideration as to how that's going to be taken down, because that's bolted to the beam that's in that room for a deep clean. That's pretty much it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Ann Alexopoulos. There's been lots of parents that have had concerns regarding ticks on the fields around Green Meadow and Fowler. And I was wondering if that is like a school issue, is that a town issue? The nurse is taking off a lot of ticks, and it doesn't cost much to spray, and I think that should be considered on how we would fund something like that. Would it be the town? Can we bring it to the town? Because, you know, there's only so many times that we can be pulling off ticks off of our kids.
So the other thing is, I'm not sure, because we have a pesticide management program, and I'm not sure where that would fall, so we would have to find out. I could ask Michelle to find out if tick spraying falls under that or not, because in a school, you know, some of the problems we've had with rodents and those sort of things, we have to use very specific items, and I'm not sure where that would fall.
So now if it's something that we're already paying for, then can we talk about whether or not it's working?
Yeah, so I don't think we are paying for
Okay.
it. And then, so the first question is, can we do something? I'm not certain whether we can or not, because you're only allowed to use certain things on school grounds.
Right, and I know that there's tons of, if organic or other methods, we've had sprayed, our neighbors have had other things sprayed. So I'm sure we could look into what we could do, because it's a ridiculous amount of kids that are getting ticks on them. And it's not even the kids that are running in the woods, like after school. It's just going to the playground.
So I think we have to find out if we can or what we can use, and then what the cost is, because I'm pretty certain that we're not spraying or doing anything for tick management right now, so.
And then,
We'd have to-
is there a record if the nurse pulls off a tick? Can we see how many? Because I think it's astronomical. Do they keep record of that? Does anyone know?
The nurses keep records of all the students they service, so
Okay,
I don't know if they quantify the ticks, but we can find out.
okay, thank you.
But you can call and find out, so.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Katie Krasinski, kindergarten teacher. I'm coming on behalf of the pre-kindergarten and kindergarten teams. There's been some side conversations and nothing has been officially said, and I'm coming to ask. We are NAEYC accredited, and both teams really would like to continue to be and continue to pursue it. So I'm asking you to continue to fund it in the years forward. We've lost a lot, and it really shows we're high-quality pre-K and K. It's important to us. The second thing, as this meeting was going on, I'd like to point out on the map, when you're talking about that kindergarten and possibly the panels, the roof, I'd like to point out that hallway is also part of the kindergarten wing. I believe it's separate. The pre-K classrooms are separate. So just food for thought too. I don't know how much this is, but the pre-K rooms also have separate entry. So like a pod, you'd have to enter separate, but that's just keep it in mind about that wing. Thank you.
Hey, can I ask where we are as far as the process of when we next go for the certification? Is it 2 years?
Preschool and kindergarten on cycles are about 8 months apart.
Okay.
And the original plan beginning last year was that we would combine those two to save money. It doesn't make sense when we're under the same roof to have two separate programs. So the last 2 years, I've combined the programs so that it's one portfolio. So we would move to the first one, which is pre-K, which will come up, this is 2019, it would be the fall of 2021, which means our application, though, would have to go in the spring of 2020. So in every 5 years, that's the renewal, which is the larger amount of funds. So just wanted to keep that on the radar.
And who has submitted the application in the past?
I have the last 15 years.
All right.
Thank you.
And
for doing that.
you aren't getting direction to do that again? Is that-
There's been some side conversations with administration that it might be stopped to save funds.
It's only like $5,000. It's not.
It's 5,000 every 5 years. Every year it's about, depends on our enrollment with combining pre-K and K. Each one right now is about 200 to 250. If we combine them, it would be 350 a year.
Plus the 5,000.
Plus the 5,000, so it'd be 350 years 1 through 4, 5,000 on the 5th year.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I haven't heard that, but.
I was going to make one other recommendation. Sorry. So in my field, what is commonly referred to as an on-call service contract is something that we all live and die by. So what they are is it's a 3-year contract with 2 one-year renewals, and it allows you to, at a moment's notice, call for any trade, any design professional, and they show up within an hour and do whatever you need done at a locked-in, previously agreed-to rate. It doesn't cost the town anything. It's a use-it-or-lose-it contract. You don't have to spend a penny. You can spend as much as you want. It's approved by the state. It's a way to avoid having to go through individual procurement processes every single time you need something. There's no purchase orders. It's just a phone call and it's done. As you look forward to the MOU and how we arrange the relationship between the city, or between the town and the school department, I think that should be something that's explored either way. It gives both sides, quite frankly, way more tools in the toolbox should something come up. So if you need electrical work done quickly and the town can't provide that, you make a phone call and it's done. And if you have a situation like we're currently faced with, where you don't have a facilities director for a period of time, or they're on vacation, I mean, they do take time off once in a while. It gives you guys, so I have a list. I have 34 on-call service contracts, and at my office is a list of every phone number, fax number, email. They're all right there, so that if I'm not there, somebody can just look up and say, plumbing, here's the number. They call, they come out. It's done. That's it. Certainly, we want to be financially responsible and utilize town resources whenever we can to control costs. But to Natasha's point, there comes a time at which you just need to pull the trigger and get stuff done. And you need to set yourself up for success to be able to do things like that quickly. So just a suggestion. I'd be happy to work with the school committee and the town on that.
I have no idea if this would make any sense, but Assabet, I wonder if they do offer anything like that, but that would only end up being during the school year. So then you still need a backup plan in the summer. So.
And their projects really need to be planned well in advance.
That's what it
It's a
sounds
process for
Yeah.
them, and usually they're
It would be so
not,
nice
they're
if
not
they
for
could do
quick, they're for like projects that are going to take a while to do.
But to that end, I think it would be helpful for us to understand the resources that we might be able to take advantage of from
course.
Assabet, because we've never really done it. It means more than the rep coming in. I don't know how we would do that, but boy, it would be really great to utilize their services.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, Condito. I've got a couple of things that I wrote down while we were going through the whole meeting. If you're going to have ASAP or EUC come out and do some testing of the TechTom or whatever it is, panels, could we please get a report this time? The last time we had testing done by them, we got test results only, and so there's no indication of what those test results mean. So I would appreciate if there's a report and that report could be shared.
Yeah, we didn't get a report either.
Yeah,
That's why we didn't share one with you.
No, I realize that.
That's whatever the service is.
But you need to ask for the report, or part of what you're having done is a report to go with it, so it's not just test results, because sometimes test results by themselves don't tell you enough.
Right.
The other thing I'm asking about is the packing up at the end of the year. We've got this deep cleaning that's going to be done. I think we need some clear direction as to what that pack up is going to be at the end of this year, what the time frame is going to be for pack up, and how that's going to be accomplished. Boxes, or, where are things going to be put? Are the walls actually going to be washed? I believe a lot of the walls in the building are absolutely filthy. Do we take things off the wall? How are we going to store things? I've been moved from my room, so I have things in a pod. That pod is going. My things were never cleaned before they went into the pod. I didn't have the opportunity to clean things before they packed up. I'm not going to have the opportunity necessarily to clean things when they come out of the pods. Where is it going to go? The stuff that I'm using right now, I'm in the gym. The boxes that I had to get my stuff there are no longer available as far as I know. How is that going to be done? When is the time frame? I service kids right up to the last day of school, so what's the expectation? And that space is also used in the summer, so how much do I need to leave for the person that's working over the summer, and that summer person is not going to pack anything up. Right. So there's a lot more to this pack up, clean up, and setup that I think needs to be thought through, and then clear guidance given to all involved.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Everybody else is all set. Can we move to members' comments?
I just wanted to, again, talk about how phenomenal the senior projects were. I had the opportunity, again, to sit in front of 3 fantastic students, and the presentations that they did blew it out of the park. So I am continuously amazed, not amazed, I shouldn't say that because I know our students are phenomenal, but just the level of the work, the amount of work in the presentation, and that is pretty incredible. So, and I also had the opportunity to meet one of the principal candidates for Green Meadow, which was great this afternoon. So I wanted to thank Dan for making time, allowing us to do that. So that's it.
I would just like to apologize for being late tonight.
You weren't late.
You weren't late.
I wasn't?
No, you were
Not really.
Oh, okay.
You were kind of early in my time. I guess a couple things. So for good reason, we've been very focused on Green Meadow, but that starts to, in the back of my project manager mind, make me concerned about making sure we're considering other things we need to consider in the district, because if it's not getting attention for a minute, then I start to be, it's kind of like when your child's quiet in the other room for a few minutes and you're like, what are they doing in there? This isn't good. You just need to put attention in other areas. So that just occurred to me, and I know there's a lot of good work that is just, with all of this happening, that everyone's been still working and making, moving things forward in a lot of areas. So, but just are all being able to consider that. And as part of that, one of the things, and we've been all having conversations about this, is looking to, as we're getting to the end of this year and beginning to look to next year, having those trainings will be a fantastic way to continue the thread from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. They gave us the superintendent evaluations, and I think they'll be able to provide the information so that you'll be able to, Natasha will be able to, it's not like rocket science, but you'll be able to see it and then follow along for the next set. Well, what's nice about that is that they really discuss a lot of the things that has been arising for us, which include alignment from the district goals, superintendent goals, school councils, that you see all that, and that could essentially be in a table where you see how everything aligns, and so that we're all working together at our different levels, and the teachers and everyone's seeing what we want to do together, and that we are picking things so that we are not feeling like we're all over the place doing everything, right? It just really helps to create powerful alignment, and to have and to use the superintendent evaluation as one mechanism that allows us to do that. And so we're talking about trying to look at, really focus on that, and that's come up in different conversations I've had with different people. So I look forward to that and setting ourselves up kind of as we end this year to do to allow that work to be happening so that even like the school committee is setting our own goals so that we can be a part of that work. So any case, I wanted to mention that because that's just been on my minds, and I think that having that begin as we end this year, so that then we're set up at the start of next year for that to be in place, and giving Bob a template to work from, something that he could, I don't know what that would look like, we'd decide, but that was just a thought I had, and then we decide how we go from there.
I just wanted to let everybody know that the CPAC and the administration are having a meeting on Tuesday, May 28th at 7. So this is our continuing work of collaboration meetings. And I also was at the principal, meet the principal, or whatever they called it, today, which was good. And I am assuming I think there are 2 candidates, or I think there's another one next week, from what I hear. So I'm looking forward to that one too. So, and that's all I've got.
And thank you to the people that are on that committee, the principal search committee, because they've been doing a lot of work in a short period of time as well.
Yeah. Are you all set? Okay, I think we're all set. So I guess I'll close the meeting. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor? Okay. And we're adjourned, 9:26.